engine back from the machine shop. Let's get a look at this thing. This is where the oil pump lives. That's this guy right here. That is responsible for feeding oil to the whole engine. Any engine rebuild can fail in minutes if oil doesn't get to where it's supposed to. This is a Ford Y block, but the principle applies to most engines. Before assembly, you have to follow the oil. If you don't get that number 3 cam bearing index properly, you're not going to get any oil in your top end. Like butter. I think anything that we do have that's an issue will self-clearance. Hey, before we get started, I just wanted to add a little disclaimer here. I am not an expert in this field. I'm just bringing you along on the journey. Full disclosure, I've built a whole bunch of single-cylinder, rotary, and 4-cylinder engines. This is my first V8 full rebuild. While a lot of this information is helpful, consider it to be opinion. Consult your shop manual and do your own research. And yep, this engine came back filthy from the machinist. That was the reason I was able to jump in line in front of everybody else and not wait 9 months before he gets to it. There's a long wait at most of these shops, and this is how I was able to drop mine off and get it done right away. Here we go, on with the video. Here is the engine back from the machine shop. Let's get a look at this thing. Kind of like Christmas. Really wrapped it up good. Oh, those cylinders look way better than they did before. Let's get a close-up. I think it was that first cylinder here that had problems before. It was actually the second cylinder. I'll take you back so we can have a look. Here we go. Just gonna do a quick hone right here. I got a spot. It looks like some water sat for a very long time. And I wanna see how it cleans up. Yeah, it's not great. See if I can get you in there a little closer. There, now you can see it. It's essentially a 2-inch long little ditch where the top of the piston was sitting. Yeah, it's quite the little crater I got going there. Like I said, I think water just sat on top of the piston, a little bead of condensation, and made that nice, lovely rust spot. So that's what started this whole adventure. Let's get back to taking a look at what the machinist did. Everything's looking nice. Now we'll look at the other side. Let's flip this thing upside down and have a look. Okay, the mains all look good. Also got new frost plugs all the way around. And it looks like he pulled out all of the plugs and put new ones in, new sealant. There's the main one right there for the cam. That's new. And same thing on this side. New frost plugs and a new plug as well. Let's make sure the cam bearings are in right. On these Y blocks, it's super important to make sure that all the cam bearings are indexed properly. I'll explain why this is so important. Here we're looking at the driver's side cylinder bank. This is where the oil pump lives. That's this guy right here. He pumps oil down into that hole, and that hole comes out right here where it feeds the oil filter. And from the oil filter, it goes into the main oil galley. We'll get a look at that from the inside. This protrusion right here, going along the inside of the driver's side cylinder bank, that's the main oil galley. That is responsible for feeding oil to the whole engine. And from that main oil galley, you can see that there is a artery, if you will, that runs off of it and feeds each main cap and cam bearing. I'm going to try to illustrate this artery idea coming off of the main galley. Here we've got the number 4 cap or the number 4 bearing, and it's a straight shot from the oil filter right into the main bearing. And down here inside of this bolt, you can see the wire running down, and then when we go over to the bearing, you can see the feed hole right there. There's the wire. So that's the path the oil takes. And from there, it branches off into the cam and main bearings. And that is essentially replicated on each one of the main bearings, feeding the main bearing and the cam. So you can start to see why this is a bit important. Let's start by checking to see that each one of the cam bearings is lined up with its oil feed. Here we are starting at the front. There it is. You can see the wire. Second one. There's our wire. Third one. There's our wire. Fourth one. There's our wire. And the rear fifth one. There it is. There's our wire. So we're indexed that way properly. We still got a couple more things to check out. Here we are at the back of the engine, the number 5 cam bearing. This is where the cam meshes with the distributor. And there is a little feed hole to feed the bottom of the distributor. Right here, we also have to make sure it's indexed properly. And as you can see, there it is. I'll also flip the engine over so you guys can see it from the other side. I slid the distributor in so we can get our bearings. I'll show you what happens when we pull it out. You can see where that feed hole ends up. It essentially lubricates the base of the distributor. There, that was the bearing. We just stuck the wire into the feed hole, and that, as you can see, feeds the bottom of the distributor. And from there, it essentially falls down into the bottom of the oil pan. Let me focus. Yeah, it just drips down into the bottom of the oil pan. Okay, so here we are looking at the number 3 cam bearing. And as you can see, there's 2 more holes that we need to make sure are indexed properly. One on each side. I'll show you what those do. Just giving you a shot from the top which cam bearing or which bearing we're talking about. This is the number 3, or the thrust on the crankshaft. Here we are with the engine in the upright position. Just wanted to show you which oil feed I was talking about. This is the one that goes into the head. That's the one we were just looking at. That goes down to that number 3 cam bearing. There's one on each side. And what that's holes for is feeding oil up to your rockers. So essentially, if you don't get that number 3 cam bearing indexed properly, you're not going to get any oil in your top end. So yeah, that's an important cam bearing. Got to make sure that that thing's in right. So just to summarize, number 3 and number 5 are super important. Number 3 is indexed to 3 spots, and number 5 is indexed to 2 spots. Got to make sure you get them right, or you're going to be really bummed when you go to start it. So I'm thinking my first step is going to be clean it up again really good, just to make sure it's not full of all sorts of machining schmutz. And then I want to put the cam in it, make sure it turns freely, and then Plastigauge the main bearings and the crank bearings. Not that I don't trust the machinist, I just want to make sure I got the right bearings. Oh, we'll probably put the lifters in as well and make sure that those are all moving freely. Before we get too far into it, I thought I'd give you a little backstory on the bearing drama that I had. So these were the bearings I picked up. I couldn't find any new bearings in 040 undersized. So this is what I ended up buying. I hadn't opened the box. And when I did open the box, I was a little bit disappointed. Talked to a few folks and they said they would have ran these. I was not feeling very good about it. I tried cleaning a couple of them up. Didn't have that great a success. Wasn't really happy with it. There's still pitting here if you look really close at these. It's almost like the stuff you would see on an old lead acid battery terminal that you end up scraping off. I didn't feel good about it, so I spent another few weeks looking and waiting, and I finally came up with these that look way better. So I still got to clean these up. They got some corrosion on them, but apparently they're not making these bearings anymore in this size. So this is what I get to deal with. If you're going to be building an old engine, make sure you can get parts before you start sizing things out. I carefully went over the new bearings and got all the corrosion off. I used a blue paper towel as an abrasive, and then used a stone to get off any high spots. And on the bearing side of things, I use the same blue paper towel to wipe off any corrosion and actually, I don't know, I guess kind of polish it at the same time. So I think they're ready to go. I'm going to put these in the block now. Thought I would show the numbers that are stamped into the block, and then they got one on the cap too. Each one has a number. Makes it kind of nice for keeping track of things. I spent a few days cleaning this greasy thing up. Figured I'd show off all my hard work. I also went through and chased every thread in this whole engine, used a stone to level off all the flat spots, and used a grinder to clean off sharp flashing. And in the end, spent about an hour blowing it out with compressed air. I think it's finally ready to go. All right, let's get this cam in here and see how it feels. Just putting a little bit of oil on all the bearings. Already got the cam oiled up. Here we go. I had a bit of flash rust on all of these journals. So I ended up, again, using the blue paper towel to clean the rust off. Feeling good so far. Not bad. It's spinning freely. It does seem to get a little bit tighter the further back I push it, but the more I turn it, the less it's starting to feel like that. I think anything that we do have that's an issue will self-clearance without any issues. So there we go. I'm going to pull this cam back out, and then we will put the crank in. Next, we can set the bearings in. And I am going to put just a touch of oil on these. I got a light coating of oil on the crank journals already. Just going to gently set it in here. So much for gently. Well, it's in. Spins nice and free. Let's get these caps on. Again, just a little oil, not a lot. There's that middle thrust bearing. I'm going to run them down by hand. I'm going to leave the middle thrust bearing until the end. Just want to make sure there's no binding or nothing weird. All right, I tightened it so it's just starting to catch. And it's still moving. It's a good sign. If you're wondering why I'm using such a ratty old torque wrench, it's because it belonged to the original owner of this car. Just seemed like the right thing to do. I had it checked out on the tool truck, and it's more than adequate for what we're doing here. Just thought I'd throw that in before I get dogpiled in the comments. All right, let's go for 30. All right, still spins nice. Yep. 45. All right, still spinning. Oh yeah. Like butter. Let's go with 65. And there's 65. Spinning nicely. Let's go to 95. Torque on this engine is 95 to 105, I believe. Beautiful. Still like butter. All right. Tighten down this thrust. Make sure we still got movement. Yep. Let's go right to 30 on this one. Still spinning nice. Still got clearance on the thrust. Go to 50. Make sure we still got thrust clearance. We do. Spin it to a neutral situation there. And we'll go up to 65. Still got thrust clearance. Yep. Sounds good. Spins both directions. All right, here we go, 95. Definitely tell it's tighter. See if we got thrust still. Oh yeah. Nice. Yeah, you can definitely tell it's tight or torqued down to spec. Nice and new bearings. All right, I'm gonna pull these caps back off and we will Plastigauge it next. All right, here we are with the Plastigauge. Just so I don't have to address it later in the comments, yep, I know that Plastigauge isn't as accurate as a micrometer and bore gauges and all that kind of stuff. My goal here is to just make sure that the bearings match up with the numbers the machinist gave me. I would rather figure it out now than to hear a lovely drum beat when the engine first starts. I essentially just cut off 5 pieces like you see here, and I'm going to put them on the bearing journal and then throw the caps on. I didn't go all the way across. I just didn't think it was necessary. And that's all I got to do the whole engine, and I don't feel like buying more. And this is why you don't listen to some guy on the internet. Boy, was I wrong. Do not do that. Make sure you put the Plastigauge all the way across the bearing, or you're going to end up with a little dent like I did. Turns out it creates a point load in one small area and can dent the bearing. Luckily, this was the only one it happened on, the number 3 or the thrust bearing. The other ones were all fine. Do not do this. Make sure you run the Plastigauge all the way across the bearing face. I spent the better part of an hour fixing this, and I guess I'm just going to run it because it's all I got. This bearing's going to be fine, but it is a good example of why you follow directions. The best way to learn is to live it, and I won't be forgetting this one anytime soon. I could have easily hid this one with an edit, but I figured I'd share so somebody else doesn't make the same stupid mistake. Folks, it's called Sorta Fixed for a reason. Let's get back to the build. Thought I would just show what I meant by setting it on the journals. So there's the front, there's the next one, the next one, the next one, and the back. Next, I will set the cam bearings on, or the caps, and we'll go from there. And 95. And now the thrust bearing. And 95. There we go. They're all torqued down. All right, now we take them back off and check the Plastigauge. I'm getting anywhere from 0.002 to 0.0015. So some of these are a little bit tight, like this one here on the front. But again, it's Plastigauge, and I think stuff's going to clearance out. Here's another wide one. Yeah, somewhere in the middle there. I think we're good. So the book says it's between 6 and 32 tenths, so we're well within the range. We're just on the bit of the tight side on a couple of these. But like I said, I think we're good to go. I spent a bit of time getting familiar with which way the rods go in the block. And on these old Fords, the right bank is cylinders 1 through 4, and on the left bank, we have cylinders 5 through 8. And since we're working upside down, I don't want to get things backwards, so I just wrote right on the block with a marker. That'll make life a whole lot easier. Each one of the rods has a number stamped into it, and that number is stamped on the side of the rod that has the bearing tangs. The shop manual says that the side with the numbers and the bearing tangs goes to the outside of the block. That leaves a little pocket with the bearing offset for the bearing shoulder or radius to fit into. In order to get good readings on the Plastigauge, I had to get a bit creative to stop the crankshaft from spinning. So here we just have a pry bar jammed in between the flywheel bolts and using a clamp to hold it in place. That should keep it from spinning for each one of the journals. It looks like with the cylinder offset here, number 5 is going to be the first one on the crankshaft, followed by number 1. I'm going to lay some Plastigauge on the journal and we will start getting some readings. Here I just wanted to throw in a shot of the Plastigauge laying on the journal. I put a little blue tape on the end of the rod just so it doesn't scuff up the cylinder. Shop manual says 45 to 50 foot-pounds. I'm going to do my best to not spin this on the crank while I tighten it. There we are, 45 foot-pounds. So there we can see the numbers facing the outside of the block. On each side we got 1 on the right side and 5 on the left side. Let's pull these off and see what we got. It's not the best reading. As you can see, it went right across one of the oil holes on the bearing, but I think we got what we needed. Again, this is just stacking the whole thing up and seeing what the readings are. Make sure we're in the ballpark. There we are, 15. And I'm going to call that one 15 as well. It kind of changes a little bit, but I smeared it just a titch when I was tightening it up. But yeah, I think we're good. The book says 0.008 to 0.0027 is within spec. So 0015, we are golden. On to the next one. Here is 6. Looks like it's falling right into range as the other ones. And here is 2. Trying to get it to focus here. Again, right about the same. And here is 7. And here is 3. And here is 4. And last but not least, here's number 8. That's all of them. So the crank and rods are looking good. The next step is going to be sizing out the rings and getting the pistons fitted. I think we're going to call it for this video. I got a barge load of rebuild footage to get through, and I think I want to break it up into digestible chunks. I also want to get doing one video a week, so I think I'm going to let this one out into the wild and see what you guys think. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'd like to know your thoughts in the comments. We will see you in about a week.